Right now, you might be a little bored. Maybe you picked up your phone without thinking. Maybe your eyes drifted from what you were supposed to be doing. Maybe you felt that restless, hollow pull, like your brain was demanding something, anything, to fill the silence. You probably think of that as a flaw, a weakness, a bad habit you should fix. But the real answer is far stranger. That feeling you call boredom is not a malfunction. It is one of the most sophisticated survival systems your brain has ever built. Boredom is ancient. It predates language. It predates agriculture. It predates the wheel, fire, and everything else you were taught to consider human progress. And it is still running inside you right now, in the same way it ran inside your ancestors 200,000 years ago on an open African savanna. Your brain at this very moment is not simply idle, it is scanning. Think about what boredom actually feels like. There is a restlessness to it, an urgency that does not have a name. Your attention keeps reaching outward, looking for something to grab onto. You feel like you should be doing something, but you cannot figure out what. That feeling is not random. It is a signal, and it has a source. In 2012, a neuroscientist named Mary Helen Immordino-Yang at the University of Southern California published research that changed how scientists understand what the brain does when it is not doing anything obvious. She and her colleagues discovered that when the mind wanders, when you stare out the window, when you sit in silence with no particular task, a specific network in your brain lights up. They called it the default mode network. And here is what is strange. That network is not resting. It is working harder than almost anything else your brain does. The default mode network is responsible for imagining the future, for modeling other people's minds, for constructing your sense of self across time. It runs simulations. It rehearses social encounters. It solves problems you did not know you were carrying, and it turns on the moment you stop being occupied with something external. Boredom is the felt experience of that network demanding access. Your brain is essentially saying, stop giving all your resources to this screen, this task, this distraction. There is important internal work to be done. There are futures to simulate. There are threats to model. There are relationships to process. Give me space. Now go back further, way further. Imagine your ancestor, not your great-grandparent, not even a figure from ancient history. Go back 100,000 years, a human, your size, your brain, your exact emotional architecture, sitting at the edge of a camp after eating. The fire has burned low. There is nothing immediate demanding attention. And then it begins. That restless pull, that hollow, searching feeling. What does that feeling make your ancestor do? It makes them look up. It makes them scan the tree line. It makes them notice that one of the children has wandered too far from the group. It makes them start mentally rehearsing what they would do if something came out of the dark. It makes them think about the routes they walked yesterday and whether any of them were dangerous. It makes them imagine tomorrow's hunt before it happens. Boredom, in that context, is not emptiness. It is a readiness state. It is your brain refusing to go fully offline in an environment where going fully offline could get you killed. Psychologist Sandi Mann at the University of Central Lancashire has spent years studying what boredom actually does to human behavior and creativity. What she found runs completely counter to how modern culture treats boredom. When people are allowed to be bored, genuinely bored, with no phone, no task, no stimulation, they become dramatically more creative in the period that follows. Their ability to generate novel solutions to problem spikes. Their capacity for empathy increases. Their sense of personal meaning deepens. Boredom is not the opposite of productivity. It is the prerequisite for the deepest kind of thinking your brain is capable of. But something has changed. In the last 15 years, your relationship to boredom has been completely restructured. Not by your choices exactly, by design. Every time that restless signal fires, every time your default mode network starts demanding access, there is now something waiting to intercept it. The scroll, the notification, the autoplay, the feed. These systems were engineered with extraordinary precision to catch your brain at exactly the moment boredom arrives and redirect it before the default mode network can do its work. Researcher James Danckert at the University of Waterloo, who has been studying boredom for over a decade, describes it as one of the most motivationally powerful states the human brain can enter. It is aversive enough to force action, but the action it was designed to prompt, internal reflection, future simulation, creative recombination, requires a few minutes of discomfort first. And those few minutes are exactly what the modern attention economy has learned to steal. You never get bored enough to think. You feel the edge of it, the hollow pull, and then your thumb moves before your mind has a chance to catch up. The app loads, the discomfort disappears, and your brain is fed just enough stimulation to quiet the signal without ever satisfying it. This is why you can spend 3 hours scrolling and feel more empty at the end than when you started. You were not actually resting. Your default mode network never got to run. You gave your brain sugar instead of a meal, and now it is more depleted, not less. The ancient signal is still firing. You are just intercepting it before it can complete its purpose. Here is what happens when it does complete its purpose. When you allow yourself to sit with boredom, to feel the restlessness without immediately resolving it, your brain begins to move through a sequence. First, the discomfort peaks. This is the phase most people never get through. It lasts on average about 7 to 9 minutes. Your brain resists. It searches for escape. It tells you this is a waste of time, that you should be doing something, that something important might be happening somewhere else. If you stay with it, something shifts. The scanning slows, the urgency softens, and then the default mode network goes to work. You begin to think about things you had not intended to think about. Problems surface that you had buried under busyness. Ideas appear that seem to come from nowhere. You remember something you forgot to do that actually matters. You find yourself thinking about someone you care about and realizing something true about that relationship. You feel sometimes suddenly a sense of what you actually want from your life. Your ancestors called this kind of thinking by different names in different cultures: contemplation, meditation, vision. They built practices around it: sweat lodges, desert retreats, isolation periods, vision quests. Not because they were mystical, because they understood empirically that the best parts of human thinking required silence to emerge. What they did not know, what took until the 21st century to prove, was that they were activating the default mode network. They were giving their brains the conditions boredom was designed to create. Mary Helen Immordino-Yang describes the default mode network as the system responsible for constructing meaning, not just processing information, not just solving immediate problems, actually building the internal narrative that tells you who you are, why your life matters, and what you should do next. Without regular access to that system, something strange happens. People begin to feel hollow, purposeless, like they are moving through their days without a sense of direction. They consume more and more content, seeking stimulation that will make them feel something, not realizing that the feeling they are missing cannot be delivered from the outside. It has to be generated from within. And the only way to generate it is to stop, to be bored, to let the ancient scanning signal run its course. Here is what your brain is actually doing right now in the background, beneath everything you are consciously paying attention to. It is building a model of your future. It is simulating possible versions of tomorrow, next month, next year. It is running social scenarios, imagining how conversations might go, modeling the inner lives of people you love. It is connecting ideas from different parts of your experience and looking for patterns. It is doing all of this automatically, constantly in the background, but it needs quiet space to bring that work to the surface. Boredom is that space knocking on the door. Your ancestors could not ignore the knock. There was no feed waiting on the other side of the door. There was only the savanna and the silence and the deep work of being human. That discomfort forced them to think, and that thinking is what kept them alive long enough to produce you. The next time you feel it, that hollow pull, that restless ache, that sense of needing something you cannot name, try not to reach for the thing that will make it stop. Sit with it for a moment. Let it get uncomfortable. Let your brain scan the silence the way it was built to scan the tree line. Because what you call boredom, your ancestors called staying alive, and somewhere in the part of your brain that is still running ancient software on modern hardware, it still means the same thing.